Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. Hey guys, Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Really excited for today's podcast with Dr. J and Jaban Moore. Really excited to have Dr. Jaban here on the podcast. We're going to be diving into the areas of Lyme and parasites. Really excited to go over the nitty gritty of that topic. Dr. Jaban, how are we doing today, man?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. And this is one of my favorite topics. Love talking parasites. We all got them. We all talk about them in my clinic because, well, we were sick at one point, and it's just so much fun to get people information so that they can get well and feel amazing.
Yeah. Most people in this field, because you're a functional medicine DC, most people kind of have a cool story of why they got into this field, whether it was like kind of the journey of the wounded healer where you had some health issues and someone helped to help you kind of step out of them or improve your health and performance. What's your story like? How did you get to be where you're at now in this field?
Man, I was what I thought to be a healthy young guy. I went to college as a shot putter, ended up becoming an All-American in shot put in college. So I was a big boy. I was fit, I was healthy. And then when I went to lose that extra weight that I put on for shot put, it felt like the floor just fell out from under me. My health crashed and burned, and nobody had an answer for me. No one had a reason why. Pain started. I started losing hormone function, right? So I got erectile dysfunction. My brain didn't work as well. And, for my whole life, I was so healthy and I just didn't understand why. And I can tell you, looking back now, I lived in college like so many people do. We live in stuff that's not as nice. So there was mold literally growing up the walls of the basement that I lived in. And I
Wow.
can just remember back now, looking back, I'm like, my performance started kind of dipping a little bit when I moved in there. And I didn't feel as well, and I got sore throats more often, and I had more stuffiness, but I just didn't think about it because
Right.
college guy, right? Like, not gonna think about that. We got things to do. I've got school to finish and athletics to do, and then what I've seen in a pattern with so many people is when they go to lose weight, some of those extra toxicities go into their system. And
Hmm.
then I was also in a stressful situation when I was in school because I'd gone from undergrad to chiropractic school. And that's where I lost the weight. And that was just finally the straw that broke the camel's back. And for years, I searched for an answer and I never found one until I went to Dr. Alan Lindsley, a friend of mine now, who was like, hey, man, you've got Lyme and we're going to have to work on this, but you should be able to get back to normal, back to you, back to being young and 25 like I was at the time because I looked healthy.
Right.
I just didn't feel it.
So what was your diet like back then? Were you kind of standard American in regards to lots of grains, excess carbs, those kind of things to keep the weight on, a lot of PUFAs, kind of following a standard American higher carb diet, or were you more healthy or paleo-ish?
I mean, back in college, I was definitely eating everything. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't eat a lot of
seafood diet,
sweets,
right?
but I can remember taking a bag of tater tots and, the big, huge tortilla rolls and just filling
Yeah,
it full of cheese and meat. And that would be lunch because I was trying to gain weight. I drink a gallon of milk a day back in college
yeah,
trying to gain that weight. But when I actually got sick, when I felt bad, when I was in chiropractic school and I was eating not totally organic, but I was eating more of a paleo type
yeah.
diet. It was lower carbs. It was no vegetable oils. It was pretty much whole foods. So could it have been a little better? Yeah, but it's not where you think you go from this college diet to eating healthy, losing weight, getting well, and then the floor falls out. So it didn't
Hmm.
follow that pattern of what most people think until I really stepped away to look at what happened.
Got it. Okay. All right. So you're eating this diet that probably wasn't as good. You go to chiropractic school. Obviously, there's more awareness there. You're learning. You're getting your inflammation down. Your nutrition density is going up. What happened next? Did you ever find out if you had any gut bugs, or was it more the Lyme and the mold that kind of took the top priority there?
So when I was in school, I actually never even thought about Lyme, or sorry, not Lyme, mold. I never even talked about mold. Dr. Lindsley didn't talk to me about mold because I'd moved out. I moved out of that basement when I was an undergrad. I moved actually back home to my parents' house because it was by my chiropractic school and I was trying to save money, just like I was trying to save money when I was in the basement of that horrible duplex back in the day, but so I'm living with my parents. So there's no more mold. And it's probably 2 years before I lost all the weight and really got myself to a doctor that understood what was happening, because I'd gone to others and they just didn't give me answers. So
Totally.
but by the time I got to Dr. Lindsley, he found Lyme that was out of control, Babesia and Bartonella. And those are the main bugs that we worked on. Now, throughout my journey of health, I've worked on parasites. I've done a slight amount of mold detox, but I think genetically for myself, not being HLDR, I am not MTHFR. So I think my body was able to clear some of that mold
Right.
the years after I left school. I left for my undergrad, right? So mold suppressed me, allowed Lyme in. My body couldn't handle the Lyme, but 5 years later, I had detoxed most of that mold out. So that's why I think that didn't pop up. But definitely parasites and so much Lyme and Babesia and Bartonella work. Those guys, we did a lot of work on. And those are the things that really changed the scene for me, because treatment for each one of those for about a month, and I was probably 80% better, which is a very rapid healing process. But Dr. Lindsley took good care of me. And I think genetically, my body actually is pretty resilient. I'm more of that warrior genotype.
Right.
But mold, man, mold just knocks people down, especially when you're living in a lot of it for a couple of years.
Right. So you're talking about the genotype. So not everyone's going to be super mold sensitive, right? Some people
Mm-mm.
could be around a bunch of mold and they can just deal with it and adapt. Some are going to be a little bit more sensitive. Any more info on those different genotypes? Like which ones are more sensitive, which ones are less?
Man, there's so many genes. There's more than 1,000 epigenetic genes that Great Plains Laboratory used to run. So I haven't tried to understand all 1,000. You look at more at
Of
the
course.
tests that we run these days, which is a little bit smaller. I mean, shoot, I've seen some that are 100, most are in the 50 range. And the problem that I have with epigenetic testing is when I know there's 1,000, and let's just say for grins right now, right? Like 50 are for methylation. And if you have 25 that are hypermethylated and 25 that are undermethylated, then what are you? Are you
Right.
even? So what I end up
Exactly.
doing is I run homocysteine, I'll run methylmonic acid, I'll run a hair test and a urine
Yep.
test that all test bees. And I will go, this is what is happening in your body versus what's not happening in your body. So if I see a hair test from somebody that has a lack of, let's say, sodium and potassium, so your cellular energy is going to be low. You're not going to oxidize well. You're not going to detox well. If I see homocysteine low or cobalt in your hair test low, homocysteine would be a blood test, then I know that you probably don't
Hmm.
process B vitamins well. So
Hmm.
therefore, you're not going to be methylating. You're not going to be able to detox well. So these are the things that I'm looking for more than the genetic side. I bring up the genetics because some people are like, well, genetically, I'm just like this. Or they'll say, well, why is it that you could deal with some mold, but if I walk into a house with mold in 30 minutes, I feel really awful? It's because we all are a little bit different. And
Right.
I think it was Ben Lynch. I was reading his book, and it clicked with me when he said, somebody's got to fight off the saber-toothed tiger when you're a nomadic tribe back 2,000 years ago, right? Somebody's got to fight off the tiger. But then some, they need to, when they taste the water, they get sick really fast. It doesn't kill them, but they get sick really fast. So then
Right.
they tell everybody else, don't drink this water. So those are more of your canary in the coal mine. And you got your
Right.
people that maybe worry or a little bit more anxious. So they're always keeping an alert so that if somebody was invading your tribe, that they can wake the warriors up to go do it. I think I'm more on the warrior gene type, but honestly, I work with all the people that are a little bit more the canary in the coal mine.
Hmm.
And I think that's because of the fact that mold knocked me down, even though it's harder to take me down, I still can. So I'm sympathetic. And then once we can get people that are more the canary side, if you can actually supercharge their mitochondria, you can pull them from feeling so bad to being actually really resilient. My wife's a little bit more on that canary side. And if I
Right.
give her a bunch of mitochondrial support, she can tolerate staying in that hotel room that we probably shouldn't be staying in. But unfortunately, we already paid for it and we're in there. And you're going to Mexico. How are you going to get in a tropical environment at a hotel? How can you possibly find a room with no mold? It's almost
Yes.
impossible.
It's going to be very difficult. 100%. So yeah, I totally agree, right? You want tests that look at function versus kind of this static genetic genome, which is what it is. It's not going to change. But like you mentioned, you can look at the different detoxification pathways, phase 2 detoxification, methylation markers, right? B6, folate, B12. Yeah. And these, really matter because if you have a poor diet or you're chronically inflamed or you have gut issues and maybe you just have a lot of malabsorption of a lot of these nutrients, yeah, you may run different functional tests that show these pathways not working well. And that gives you kind of a starting point to kind of work. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I always tell my clients when they ask me about genetic tests, I'm like, I'm always more than happy to run these for you and we can talk through them. But, what tests we ran is what is. Those tests are what could be.
And it's not going to change things too. I always say, is this going to change the treatment or the plan if we see you have genetic markers for mold sensitivity? If we already know clinically and functionally, these markers over here are kind of guiding us in this direction, is it really going to change what we're going to do?
Yeah. And
And so, how often are you testing the person's urinary levels of mold versus the environment, like the person's living? Do you prioritize one over the other? And then, when do you even jump on the mold bandwagon? Because, if someone has a crappy diet and they have adrenal issues and poor digestion, any symptom under the sun could look like Lyme, could look like mold. How do you prioritize?
So I definitely run some tests at the beginning, day one, before people even walk into my clinic. They call my office, they talk to my new client coordinator, and she goes, "Hey, he's going to want to see just some of these tests based off of the things that you're mentioning." Oftentimes, those tests can include an organic acid test, a hair tissue mineral analysis, and then a basic blood panel. I've got about 9 different types of people that or blood panel categories that she goes through and just looks at, like, okay, this person can fit into this category. Do you already have
Sure.
these labs? If so, he'll look at those. If not, then we'll order them for you so that by the time you get to him, he'll have information for you to provide a direction. And then, of course, we have assessment tools like a bunch of questionnaires. And I also do some muscle testing that will allow me to just understand more about a person. But the way that I dive into
In
mold
regards to
is,
muscle testing, what kind of things do you do there? Do you just kind of testing the organs? Do you use any vials to kind of get a sense of what's happening there?
yeah, I definitely test organs. I also test vials to understand what's going on inside their body, whether that be if their body would resonate with a toxin or infection. That gives me a piece of information that I can then blood test, urine test to prove out in
Right.
another way.
Gives you an area to look at, but if they're like a telemedicine patient, are those still options for you? Or you go right to the lab testing.
I do both. I do both. So you can do frequency testing or even bioenergetic testing. Some people have machines that are biofeedback machines where you can send in hair or nails. You can send in urine that can be read by a machine. I do frequency testing, self testing myself. And then I actually have a friend that will run bioenergetic testing as an additional tool if we need it.
Cool. Excellent. All right. So with the mold, what are the top things you utilize to kind of help, let's say, increase toxification capacity? Binders, nutrients. What are the big things you see kind of in your clinic that really move the needle and work for you?
So when it comes to mold, the thing that's moved the needle the most is actually not even addressing the mold itself. It's making sure that they're safe. So you'd asked, when do I look for mold, right? When do I even look for it? So if I see tests that suggest you might have mold, I'll run a mold test on the person as far as their urine. So a DNA test, which would be a mycotoxin test from either Great Plains Laboratory or Vibrant
Yeah.
America. From there, if I see that that's positive, I'm immediately going to ask for a test on their home. I start with an ERMI test, and it's about getting away from the mold. So if it's a high mold test, then we've got to do some things for your home to be able to actually address that mold. Because if you're living in it and your nervous system is flared up from it, oftentimes you've got to get your nervous system to be able to come back down.
Totally.
That is one of the absolute keys. So getting you away from mold, if you're highly sensitive to it, if you're toxic to it, is step one. From there, I've actually started doing neurofeedback with a lot of the clients that I have that are dealing with mold toxicity. Neurofeedback in a very specific way, though. I use it for disentrainment. So to break down that wall that you put up that tells your body that it needs to stay in fight or flight because it's an unsafe place. So one, get you to the safe place. Two, break the wall down that says that you're not in a safe place, because it's just like PTSD. I call it autoimmune PTSD, where your body thinks that it is still in this very unsafe, very dangerous place due to the mold. And then the third thing I do is I slowly start to supercharge your mitochondria, right? So I'm going to bring in things like CT minerals from Cellcore, which are just minerals, but they're fulvically bounded. So they actually give your cells nutrients to build themselves to flush out that toxin. The second thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be opening up the pathways that mold can detox out from. So many people don't do parasites, bacteria, or mycoplasma before mold. And what happens is that mold starts trying to come out of the body. And as it gets to, let's just say, the liver, if there's liver flukes in there, if there are bacteria in the gut that are disrupting, causing inflammation, and that mold can't come out, then it recirculates. And it causes your body a tremendous amount of herxing and difficulty if we're recirculating mold when we're trying to detox it. Then you get all your anxiety, depression, panic, and paranoia type symptoms from detoxing mold without being able to get it out. So by the time I get to mold, I use those energy supplements like CT minerals, mitochondria support,
And don't a
binders,
lot of those
glutamine.
fulvic minerals also bind to mold toxins too? Aren't they also binders in a way?
Some of them are. There are
So the
24
humic and fulvic.
tetratrillion
Yeah.
different combinations of fulvic and humic. So some fulvic humic can be supportive to the mitochondria because it's hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. And that's the main components of the human body. So some can support your mitochondria. Some can bind mold. Some will bind metal, but not mold. And it really just depends on which ones you get. So if you get some from Cellcore and it comes in its carboxy, it says it can bind mold. So that one
Right.
can. But if you
Right.
get it from systemic formulas and it's in their ENRG and it's designed for mitochondria, then that's what it's going to do. It's not going to bind mold. So you got to just make sure that you use the right combination and the company's done the research to prove what it can do, because not all fulvic humics created the same.
Yeah, because I know they have some ATP products for Cellcore that are more for the mitochondrial side, but you look on the back of the label, it doesn't really differentiate, the different types of fulvic or humic. So you kind of look at carboxy and you see similar ingredients, but you just kind of have to trust the company that, hey, these are going to be better for mitochondrial function. These will be better for the toxification.
Absolutely. And there's so many things out there that we can actually look at that are very similar. Like for instance, oregano. Oregano is one of the oldest herbs that people know about. Oregano has more than 200 phytonutrients in it. So if you use a leaf versus stalk versus stem versus root, it can actually have different effects in your body or have different potencies of what it is capable of doing. And you see that with medications. They use different parts of a plant to have a medicinal use, and they create a medication based off that phytonutrient. So when it comes to fulvic and humic, it's like, where did you get yours? What mine did you mine it out of? And what combination of these carbons and hydrogens and oxygens did you get? And that's how it's going to affect your body. So you want to make sure that when you're buying a product, that it's a product that you know what the purpose of it is for, and it's from trusted information and trusted people. So, I've used a lot of the Cellcore products. I know what they do and don't do. I've used other products, like I said, systemic formulas. I've used so many different ones that have fulvic and humic, and they just work differently.
So when you look at a lot of these kind of people that have mold, right? You kind of prioritize what's going on. I almost always prioritize getting the gut better, getting the diet better, getting nutrition better, getting digestion better. Because I find if those kind of pathways aren't kind of dialed in, I mean, like you mentioned, you can kind of push mold, but you may have a bottleneck on getting it out. Do you kind of have a similar kind of methodology in how you prioritize the systems?
I
What comes
definitely
first?
do. You got to be able to poop. That's step
Yeah, got
one.
to. Yeah,
Because if you're not pooping, it's not
absolutely.
coming out. And then I've got to make sure that I get the bigger out first, the bigger organisms out first. So I don't necessarily think of it as going after a leaky gut or diet or something. It's like, okay, so the bigger organisms have to come out first because they're going to be blocking up your detox and drainage pathways.
Right, makes sense.
Now, the diet, honestly, so many people that get to me are chronically ill, and they've done both vegan and paleo. They've done
Yep, they're
histamine
more
diet.
aware.
They've done all the things. So I don't usually stick so tightly to um, the real deep diet conversation, because they're already locked in. They're whole food, organic, and then X, which is like, are they carnivore, vegan, paleo, whatever? Because diet doesn't matter. You need to eat clean. You don't want to be causing a retoxification. You want to make sure that you are doing the detox part. You want to make sure that you're getting the stuff out. So I do the open up drainage pathways, but the biggest one that I have really, really stepped into so much now is the nervous system. I make sure that my clients are doing some kind of either neurofeedback, vagus nerve retraining, something to deal with the trauma that has happened to their immune system. Because so many of the clients I'm working with have become sensitive or overreactive, anxious. So as I work with these people, the nervous system has become a huge key component that I talk about at the very start. So it's get yourself into a safe environment, make sure your body knows it's safe, make sure you're doing anti-inflammatory lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's start getting out the organisms kind of by size. I mean, it's not always that way. 70% of the time I find parasites first if they have them, but then it goes bacteria, mycoplasma, mold, metal, radioactive elements.
And what type of biofeedback program are you recommending? Is it something that patients can get on their own? Is it something that you've been trained in? How does that look and how do you incorporate that?
So the biofeedback that I've used is just the testing side. I don't recommend necessarily going and doing treatments on it. Not that you couldn't. There are people that do those types of things. But I just have a friend with a machine. And if somebody wants a biofeedback reading that can add to our information, I'll have them go ahead and go over to his office and do that, or send something to his office because I do so much telemeds because I'm working with people all around the world. They'll just send a sample of, like I said, saliva, fingernail or hair, and then he can use his machine and scan it and let us know what he's dealing with. It's more of the testing. Some of the countries that I work with, it's really very difficult to get organic acid tests or blood tests, and they just don't have those resources.
Right. And so let's say their neurofeedback testing is off. What's now the treatment to kind of get their nervous system so they feel safe and kind of more relaxed and steady?
So we've said two things. You said biofeedback, which is sending the sample. Neurofeedback is different. This is a sound, light, and color therapy. And it is actually, the test is a QEEG. So it's a cap that you put on the head.
Okay, got
and
it.
that cap reads the electrical frequencies in the brain. So it tells me what your brain waves are actually doing.
Right.
And then
So how are you doing that? Is that in your office?
That is in my office, or I'll refer people. I've used clinics in London. I've used clinics in Spain. I've used
So
California.
you'll just look for like a neurofeedback in that area, and
Mhm.
essentially, yeah, like lights count, light sounds, colors, and then essentially it creates a different sound if you kind of get into a more parasympathetic state.
So it's actually reading your
Certain-
brain waves. So it's
Yeah,
delta, beta, alpha. And if they're too high in energy or too low in energy, it's going to read that. And then it's going to create a plan to bring you up. And then while you're going through the plan, it will actually be reading your brain. And it's like the carrot on the end of the stick, honestly. If your brain energy is too high and we want to bring you down, it will turn the TV screen off and the sound off when you're too high. So your brain's like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? And then
got it.
when it drops back down to the lower level, it'll let you watch TV again. So, we don't put anything that'll make you jump on TV while we're doing it. So it's like Blue Planet. And you're sitting there watching an interesting part and you're just like, oh, this is great. And then it shuts it off because your brain went too high of energy. And then it drops back down. So it teaches you to bring that energy level down. But how I'm using it's a little bit different. That's the main type of neurofeedback, what we just described. What
Yeah.
I'm doing is actually called disentrainment neurofeedback. So I'm using it to disentrain. So it actually opens up the amygdala, which is a part of your brain
Mm-hmm.
that is usually the part that will protect you from traumatic situations. So it blocks your memory. It blocks your ability to remember whatever happened. So if you were at war and you had a bomb drop in front of you and that traumatized you, then you come back and you don't remember why, but when fireworks go off, you drop to the floor, you freak out, you get scared, you have anxiety, you don't sleep. So then what we do is we do disentrainment. So it actually takes the amygdala and it kind of shuts that off and allows you to remember. And now that you're back home and you're in a safe place, you can go, okay, that happened to me when I was at war, but I'm safe here at home now. I'm okay. That firework is not the same thing. And you can resolve that so that your subconscious isn't battling your conscious. And then now that can let your fight or flight come down because you're not in constant, what happened to me in the past? I know something happened to me in the past, but I don't know what it was, which is where nervous system gets stuck. The
I know
same thing happens with
EMDR
mold.
and EMDR and EFT and tapping stuff. Isn't that kind of similar in how it's kind of decreasing some of that subconscious type of trauma within the nervous system as well?
I do recommend both of those at times, but neither one have I seen make the massive changes where I've had somebody come to my clinic. They'll fly in. I've got somebody here right now from Ohio. I walked right by her to do this podcast. And she's done both of those, the EMDR and EFT, and they're both phenomenal. But what I've seen from neurofeedback disentrainment, specifically the disentrainment part, is people will come out of my clinic and they'll have a 20, 30, 50% reduction in their sensitivity or their body's fight or flight state just by doing 10 sessions. And they do those 10 sessions from, like, they start at Monday morning, they do a brain map, and then they do 2 sessions, and they do 2 sessions a day for 5 days. So they're done. And within the work week, they're done. They go back home and they'll get somewhere between 20 and 50% reduction in their fight or flight state, which allows me to be able to do so much more work, so much more faster with them because their body isn't so reactive to the detoxes or the supplements. Their body is able to calm down, which also allows their immune system to function better, their energy system to be able to produce better. It's so incredible.
So if someone were to find someone like that, right, that's just neurofeedback, it again, disentanglement,
Disentrainment.
disentrainment.
Yep.
Got it. And then is anyone that would have a site that's kind of trained in that good enough, or is there a certain kind of certification or
So
criteria?
I fell into this on accident, to be honest.
Are you trained in yourself, or do you have a practitioner that works for your clinic?
I am trained in it myself, and we have a machine in my clinic. And the most common person that does neurofeedback will do entrainment. So they're trying to entrain you to do something, so to like lower your brain waves or raise your
Yep.
brain waves, like I was talking about earlier. I did the disentrainment with a staff person of mine who had been through a lot of really terrible things. So I called the company. I was like, what would you start with for a person that's been through all these terrible things? They said, well, do the PTSD protocols. So I did them. She had a couple of flashbacks. She had a couple of memories during the day and nightmares and things. And then she just slowly started to calm down. And she actually became like a different person almost, because her fear and trauma that was leading and controlling her life started to fade away. I was like, well, wow, that's really interesting. That works so well for you. And I have all these other patients that are coming in that are also in a fight or flight state, but not from traumas that were emotional in their life, but from being sick. So I go, what if it will work for them? So I had them do it, which is, again, I'm using the PTSD trauma setting. They just, in the company that I bought my machine from, they call it disentrainment because it's breaking the barrier down. The problem is most neurofeedback providers out there, they want to entrain. So what you've got to be very careful with your words and say, I want to disentrain. I want to do PTSD. I want to do trauma. I want to calm my nervous system.
Disentrain. So
Yep.
so there's entrainment and then disentrainment.
Yes.
And then entrainment is primarily used for what?
For trying to solve or fix a testable problem, meaning a high or low energy in the brain based off of the brain waves. So you're trying to bring the energy down in the frontal cortex so that you have less anxiety or less irritability. So they're
Got it. So
doing a
it's helping with that.
symptom-based treatment.
Mhm. Got it. More of a symptom, kind of calming, relaxing, where the disentrainment is more helping with that PTSD type of subconscious
Mhm.
trauma.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. And so we have kind of the parasites, the Lyme stuff. We mentioned these as being kind of bigger issues on the detoxification side that can kind of bottleneck a lot of the mold detoxification. When you test for urinary mold metabolites, for instance, do you try to make sure the detoxification pathways are working a little bit so you can actually get some mycotoxins in the urine? Or do you do it without any type of glutathione or N-acetylcysteine challenge? How do you assess that?
So I like actually doing it both ways. I typically do it with no assistance whatsoever at the start, because if I test your body for a urine test for mold and I get mold positive on the test and you're doing nothing to detox at all, then it gives me a hint that you're probably in the environment still.
Right, that makes sense.
If I test you when you're doing a detoxification protocol or push or provocation, and it comes out, then I don't know if it's now or if it was in the past. And I have no frame of reference on that, because if I'm doing glutathione push, then it could be 20 years old. And I just don't know that information. So for me, it's more important to make sure, again, that we're in a safe place today, because if you're at a safe place today, then I have a good chance of getting you well. If you're not in a safe place today, then I got to get you to one.
Would you ever want to just test the home first before you do a urinary mold test to see if there's anything positive where they're at now first?
If I have any if they suspect, if they show me a picture of, hey, look back here on the wall, does this look like mold? And I'm like, yeah, it looks like mold. Okay, let's just run the test on the home. It's actually less expensive anyway.
Right.
But if they're like, I have no idea, I don't see any mold anywhere, I don't smell any mold anywhere, but I see that their albumin level is high in their blood work, that their methylation toxic exposure marker in their oat is
Yep.
elevated. I
Yep.
see their oxalates elevated. I'm like, I think you probably have mold. Let's do some further investigation on your body through a urine test, and then from there, the home test.
What about colonized mold? Like on the organic acid test, you may see like fusobacterium or aspergillus organic acids markers really high. Is that just more from yeast in the gut that's kind of just colonized there and that's producing a lot of those metabolites? Is that just addressing the gut issues?
That's not how I'm reading it, because I've had so many people that have gone through practitioners that have done anti-yeast diets. They've done the oreganoes and crupic acids. They've done diflucan and nystatins, and they still have those markers elevated in their body. Um, so I have not found that those organic acid test markers mean candida yeast. I have found them more to mean mold toxicity. And then I confirm it through running a urine test and then a home test.
Right. So that mold's colonized in the gut. So that the environmental mold in the home is also affecting the gut. So you're trying to hit it from both sides either way, right? You're trying to fix the gut as well as the environment
Mhm.
still.
Absolutely. So you get the environment well, but while you're getting the environment well, you're going back in and cleaning out the mold, the yeast, and likely the bacteria and parasites. Because if
Yep.
you get Aspergillus, Fusarium, Stachybotrys in your body, it suppresses your immune system and it allows every other organism you come into contact with to start to colonize your body also. So it's
Right.
never just that one thing. So if you've got those positive on your oat test, I'm just going to automatically, until proven otherwise, which we'll run the tests, assume that you're going to have these other organisms. And I'm just going to start
Correct.
cleaning, healing, and sealing the gut while making sure that you're getting into a safe environment, rebuilding your mitochondria and your mineral content. Because most likely, when you deal with somebody with mold, they're going to become electrolyte deficient because their body's so stressed out from the mold that they just constantly are urinating out all their good stuff.
Makes sense. And so when do you switch gears and go after Lyme? Because I find, I haven't been doing this for over a decade, decade and a half. I've seen so many patients that come in and they've gone through the Lyme wheelhouse where they've just seen so many doctors and they're like Lyme, Lyme, Lyme. They put them on tons of, antibiotic protocols or tons of Lyme killing, and they don't really get better. When do you prioritize Lyme? I still find that I try to address everything else hormonally, gut, the toxification stuff, and I deal with that stuff later on because I find a lot of times, like you mentioned, when the immune system gets better and stronger, those things kind of tend to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
But I'll still kind of create specific protocols. When do you go after that specifically?
So Lyme would probably fall to my third to fourth most important piece. So say you have everything that I've mentioned on this podcast, right? You've
Right.
got parasites, gut bacteria, yeast, Lyme, mold, radioactive elements, heavy metals. I would probably go parasite. So assuming we're in a safe place,
Right.
trauma aside, we have parasites, GI bacteria,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to go to systemic bodily bacteria, which would include Lyme disease right there. So that's about third. And then I'm going to go from there to mycoplasma and then into mold. So those would be my first five that I'd be going after.
Got it. And then what are your favorite herbs that you use? I find that when you go after like a lot of gut bacterial bugs, there's an overlap with a lot of the herbs that you may use, let's say for gut stuff, that may kind of cross over with Lyme, whether it's olive leaf or oil of oregano or noni or neems. There's a big crossover there. What are some of your favorite herbs? And do you notice that crossover too with some of the gut stuff?
Oh, there's definitely a crossover. So if I test you, I've got people where I had to give them a little roadmap, like these are all the things that came back positive. We're going to work on this many, and the rest are probably going to go away. And what I end up seeing is we clear the digestive tract of parasites. By the time I get that done, if I had a way to tell you 0 to 10, which energetic testing, muscle testing can, so I'm like, okay, 0 to 10, Lyme is a 10. By the time I get the parasites out, they're like, oh, it's a 6, it's a 5. So then we don't have to do nearly as much work on those things
You've
because your
knocked it
body's
down a big
stronger.
chunk.
Yeah, your
Right.
body's stronger. And my favorite herbs, I mean, ones that you didn't mention would be like Japanese knotweed,
Yeah. Resveratrol.
lutenzi.
Yeah.
Um, I think you already mentioned noni. Noni is one of my favorite herbs
Yeah.
out there. It's just so phenomenal.
Yep.
Uh, gosh, wormwood, I think is another good one.
Yep.
Those are definitely some of my
You already
favorite ones
mentioned
that are used in a lot of those for Lyme.
that. You use silver at all too?
I
Or any
really don't.
biofilm busters too?
I do use some biofilm busters. So I use serapeptase, nattokinase, which are both digestive tract enzymes, and then Supreme
N-acetylcysteine,
Nutrition.
Nacodol?
I do use a little bit of NAC. NAC is kind of part of my liver support supplement, so it's already in there. Now that's obviously a dose that's not known to be as biofilm busting. I know some people
Right.
use really high dose
A couple
NAC
grams.
for biofilm. Yep. But I found BFB which is a combination of essential oils from Supreme Nutrition, is actually a nice topical one because people will get where their hands are still really stuck or their elbow still has pain. And I'm like, we've been dealing with Lyme and Babesia. Let's put some BFB out here topically, let it absorb through the skin. And also that pain starts to fade while we're going through treatment, whereas just the treatment alone didn't do it.
Got it. Do you use like a lot of adaptogens as well to help?
It depends on the person. So Some people that have POTS or that are just really depleted, if I see that albumin being high, I think dehydration, you can throw definitely some rhodiola, some ashwagandha. The supplement I actually use is from Quicksilver. It's Nano Mojo. It's a pump bottle, so it goes in easy. And whether you're a kid or an adult, there's no worry about taking a pill. So yeah, I definitely use some adaptogens. I probably would say 30% of people I work with get some sort of adaptogenic or energy type support.
Very cool. Excellent. Yeah, it's all about the priority, right? You got to have that confidence to be able to work people through all the changes so you can kind of get those optimal results. What's the next thing? So we talked about Lyme, we talked about parasites. Anything else you want to highlight specifically on the parasite side? I mean, do you do anything to kind of open up drainage to help with die off preventatively? Or do you try to just kind of build a good foundation so when you come in to addressing some of these bugs, patients are less likely to herx and have significant die off issues?
Yeah, so using Mimosa pudica, which has become popular the last couple of years, is a
Yeah,
really
para
good.
one.
The para one, yeah, it
Yeah.
can grab hold of whole-sized parasites, help to pull it out, so that when they die, they don't just decay and let out all the toxins from inside them into your body. They can actually
Yep.
carry 6 to 8 times the body weight, their own body weight, and that's a lot of toxin your body would have to clear if we can't pull it out whole. But I do start clients with detox support. We start with, just like you mentioned earlier, it's like, do you eat right? Okay, yes, you eat right. Good. So we're peaked out on that being as far as
Right.
anti-inflammatory. We've done the neurofeedback work to where your immune system's not going to be as reactive. If I can do some sort of nervous system type work, I usually start with something like Tudka Plus from Cellcore or some sort of
Liver
milk,
gallbladder thing.
yeah, liver gallbladder. So whether that be milk thistle or even a gallbladder
Mhm.
flush, I've had people have to do to make sure that we're moving. Again, I said earlier, make sure you poop, and then doing things like castor pack and dry brushing, so that when you start doing your body and you start working on it, because these herbs are not just staying in your gut, you're going to have to get them out of your lymph. So teaching tools and techniques to allow someone to be able to get that drainage moving first. And some people talk about, oh, you got to do it for 2 months before. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just like, okay, do you react to things? Yes or no? And if people know that they do not react to supplements, they've been able to take other things that were strong biocidin or otherwise and have no reactions. I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on detox initially because you don't react. Your body probably drainage wise isn't too backed up. Or I get the other people like, I react to everything. Okay, we're going to spend a little bit more time. We're going to spend a month making sure your body's draining appropriately, that your nervous system is calmed down. Because if you're hyper reactive, it's one of those two things is backed up.
Yeah, that's really good feedback on the neurofeedback side. That disentangle or disentrainment, I think, is a good one that I'm going to work in with some of my patients that are overly sensitive. Because I do agree, right? That nervous system is just so overly stimulated where everything's going to be sensitive. And I think it's really important to kind of have that calming effect. And that's good that you added multiple drainage kind of modalities to help improve kind of things moving. What about a whole body vibration? You thought about that? Do you incorporate that at all?
I don't incorporate that a lot just because I feel like that's a little bit harder for a person to have or get to. I love it. I mean, a few of my clients have vibe plates at home and it's awesome, or they
Yeah,
find a clinic that they can go to and do it. One of the reasons why I said castor oil pack or dry brushing first is because, to be honest, they're cheap,
cheaper,
easy,
easier.
and anyone can
Yeah.
do it at home.
That's good. And so when you do dry brushing, right, it's kind of a light stroking. Are you trying to go back to the heart? Is that kind of the goal
Hmm.
to kind of keep that circulation moving?
Yeah, it's always take it back toward the heart. I actually have a video and a guide that I give to people when I recommend it, just so they know what they're doing. Because there's actually like the drainage ducts that are a little bit more out in your pecs that you're trying to go to, and then you actually drain the pecs out to those. But the rule of thumb for me for most of the time is just brush straight to the heart.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Anything else you find to be really important we haven't really addressed yet today in today's conversation?
A big piece that, since we're on the modalities, right? It's coffee enemas. Coffee enemas can be an absolute game change. They can increase your glutathione 700 to 800%. They get you to go to the bathroom, right? So if you're constipated, they make you poop. So those have been a really big tool for me just to get people moving.
Yeah, it's funny. I think of Dr. Bob Rakowski, a good friend of mine. Best part of waking up is Folgers in your butt. That was his it was his saying for a while. So that's a good one. Excellent. Anything else,
Yeah,
man?
that's the majority of the fun stuff, right? That's the big topics right there.
Very cool. Well, drjabanmoore.com is Jabin's website. We'll put the links down below if you guys want to reach out. And again, he's available via telemedicine health. He's got lots of content. All the social media links will be up on his website. Feel free and engage him. Very helpful, great resource of knowledge there. Dr. Jabin, excellent chatting with you, man. We'll be in touch real soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
You too, man. You take care.